Yes, you are, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I will call the June 14th, 2022 regular meeting of the Mill Creek City Council to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would the Mayor Pro Tem lead us, please?
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Naomi, roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Vanel,
Here.
Councilmember Bond,
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari,
Here.
Councilmember Steckler,
Here.
Councilmember Allison.
Here.
Councilmember Duque.
Here.
Okay, this brings us to audience communication. I'll start with people in the audience and then move online. Would anyone present care to address the council tonight? Okay, if we have one person, go ahead if you'd step to the microphone and name and address and try to keep your comments, if you could, to 3 minutes.
May I take my mask off?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. I brought a packet that I'd like to hand out if I may.
Is there multiple copies?
Yes, there is.
Okay, do you want to get, Martin, can you? Is there an extra copy for the city clerk?
There is, I only brought 6, I'm sorry.
That's fine. We'll make one.
As those get handed around, I'll start by
Yeah,
saying,
please do. Go ahead.
in the interest of time, I'll talk fast. But I'm sorry I'm here. This is a silly thing and you guys have important things to actually figure out. The reason I'm here is to talk about a fence.
Name and address.
Eric Casper, and I live in Fairway, 2613 147th place. The reason I'm here is to talk about a fence for a minute. And I've given you a packet with a bunch of pictures. The first picture is our home that we purchased about 2 years ago. And as you can see, it was the ugly house in the neighborhood and it hadn't been updated in for 40 years. We started by replacing all the windows and painting the house, replacing the garage door and working on updating the house. And we did that all last summer. This summer, if you go to page 2, we started with the side yard and we've already landscaped it. We brought in 40 yards of dirt and already changed the landscape and we're getting ready to do the sod and the fence. I've been working with the Mill Creek Homeowners Association through all this and everybody, my neighbors on the board and on the Architecture Control Committee, they're super happy. We put in a new roof and new fence and everything's getting pretty. As we got to this point with landscape and I was about to do the fence, I needed to submit to the homeowner association for the fence. You can kind of see in the pictures, but I put some buckets and I ran some pink string so the HOA could see exactly where I'm, just to make it a little bit easier. If you go to page 3, you'll see that the fence is going to run and hide behind these trees that are there. And I did the plot map and the prop and showed this map exactly where it's going to be and submitted all this to the HOA. They came out, saw the pink strings, were super excited and happy and approved my fence. And they did say in there, but you got to get a city of Mill Creek permit, which was a first for me. I've lived in Washington my whole life. First city I ever had to get a city permit for a fence. I'm used to dealing with the HOA. So then, okay, I'll start going down that process. First thing I did, because I know there's corner lots are weird and unique. So I looked up in the next page on page 4 is Snohomish County regulations on a corner lot. And Snohomish County says on a corner lot, you have a 15-foot site clearance triangle that you can't build anything over 42 inches. That's so that cars and safety, so they can see around that corner. And so I understood that and that made sense to me. And I wasn't doing that. My site triangle is 31 feet versus this 15 feet. So I thought I'm good. If you go to page 5, I submitted to Mill Creek with my permit application for the fence, my approval from Mill Creek Homeowners Association that said I ran this pink string and that they've already approved it along with everything. This is where I ran into Justin Horn, and I know he's here today, and I apologize. I've been trying to get the landscape in. I want to get the sod in and the fence in, and Justin and I have gone back and forth in emails now for probably 3 weeks. Justin has found in Mill Creek Municipal Code where a corner lot, by definition, and you'll see it here on page 6, a corner lot shall have 2 front yards. He adds that statement together along with the setback requirements on lots, meaning my home has a 15-foot setback on the front, which makes sense to me on the structure. You want that house back 15 feet on the front, but you also have that same 15 feet setback on the side because I'm a corner lot. Again, that makes sense to me on the structure, not necessarily the fence. So we debate back and forth about, is this really the code right? And I'm not here to try and change the code tonight, but I just want to point out that I think it's a mistake. As you go to page 7, you'll see that through back and forth with Justin, I said, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Here's a house, here's a picture of their fence, and they were permitted by the city of Mill Creek. And the city of Mill Creek required a 10-foot setback. Why am I being asked for a 15-foot setback? No answer. Page 8, we found another house. Here's a picture of their fence. They were permitted through the city of Mill Creek with a 6-foot setback. And again, I said, why am I being singled out? This seems silly. I took a bunch of pictures of other houses, all within the homeowners association. And I bring up the homeowners association because where I live is also called the PRD. We have different codes than the rest of Mill Creek because we are the former HOA. So I understand that too. But all these fences are normal corner lot kind of fences. Justin got tired of dealing with me, and I understand. And he passed me off to Clay White. Clay White turned around and said, I agree with Justin. You can either move your fence in 15 feet and basically cut that yard in half, or you can go to a 42-inch fence. And all of this seemed ridiculous to me. Like, this is not right. Then I found and this is on the last page, in the Mill Creek Municipal Code, there is a code 172230 that talks about setbacks. And you can see in here, you can have a yard setback can be reduced in size based on a number of factors. One is asking for a variance and going through the entire variance process, which is a lengthy process, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to do in that. But the other is number 2, section C below. Section C below in existing Mill Creek Municipal Code says yard setback requirements may be reduced by the director by up to 50% of the required dimensions if necessary for reasonable use of the property and upon showing of unusual circumstances because of topography, vegetation, or irregular lot shape. I sent this to Clay White and said, you already have a municipal code, some discretion. My homeowners association approved it with 5 foot. I'd like you to approve it with 7.5. You have the ability right here to discretionary the 50%. He came back with, well, and upon showing unusual circumstances because of lot size. To which my response was, the irregular lot size that I have is that my lot on a corner is not a square, it's more of a rectangle. And because of that, the house is set back this way and set back this way. There's very little to no backyard. It's all on the side. And I'm only trying to incorporate the side into the backyard. You can see in the picture in the bottom of page 11, the backyard is basically none. So my statement is the irregular lot shape is that I'm a rectangle instead of a square. And that reasonable use of the property is that the backyard's tiny and I'd like to use the side yard. And all I'm asking for out of Clay White and or Justin Horn is to use the existing code to give me the 50% reduction of what they see as that 15-foot setback. I've gotten no further response from them in 2 days. I knew there's this council meeting. And I also know that the discretion that's allowed in the municipal code is allowed to a director. But I'm pretty confident the city council also has that discretion. So while I'm here to talk about my fence specifically and not to try and change the code for everything else, which is a bigger, I'm hoping that the council will use its discretion and direct Clay and or Justin to give me that.
Thank you for your comments. I'm not sure we have that authority, but Martin, can you work with Mike and Grant to look into this issue and see if we can sort it out?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Barb, was that a no? Okay, thank you. Would anyone online like to address the council this evening? Going once, twice. Okay, there will be another opportunity towards the end of the meeting, but it may be midway. We'll probably do the audience communication. Well, we'll figure that out, whether we'll do it after the executive session or before. That brings us, I don't have my agenda up. I believe it brings us to the topic we discussed at the last meeting about process for appointing a replacement for Councilmember Bond after he resigns. We had talked about an expedited versus non-expedited schedule, with the caveat that we needed to confer with Grant of whether or not we could begin the process before the resignation became official. I conferred with Grant this morning, and he has advised that we cannot begin the process till the resignation becomes effective on July 2nd. So I think that kind of ties our hands of what our options are. So I think the likely process would be that as soon as the resignation becomes effective, we'll have staff begin the advertisement to solicit interested candidates, and we'll plan to have this on the agenda for the Tuesday, I think it's the 6th, that first Tuesday after Labor Day. Councilmember Bond and then Councilmember Steckler.
Thank you. Mayor, I've got a letter for you and for the city manager that indicates my intent to resign and the effective date being June 29th when I take
Okay.
possession of the other property.
Okay, well then, on June 30th, Friday, June 30th, we can start that process. Thank you, Councilmember Bond. Councilmember Steckler.
So Councilmember Bond's seat will be vacated June 29th, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we can begin the process of announcing it to the public on June 29th. We can begin the internal process of creating the announcement, those things, but we cannot make a public announcement until after he has resigned.
We
I
can do
believe that's
everything,
what I heard.
yeah, we can do what we need to do so that once it becomes effective, we're ready to go and start the
So,
public solicitation for applicants.
so my request was, I did not want to wait until Labor Day to start this process. We've got a lot of things on our agenda coming up in September, a number of items, a slew of items that, not the least of which a new city manager. We've got who's going to have a number of items on his agenda to be taken care of, a new budget that needs to be approved. If at all possible, and I think it is possible, this council could make a decision to pick a date in July where we could hear from appointees and make a decision in July, which would allow our city employees to do their training in August, which would put a lot less pressure on the city manager, the city employees, and us as a council in September. And I personally wanted to approach this as, what can we do as a council to, open up a date in July that we could hear from these people, make this appointment happen, and not have to wait until September, which would not be in the best interest of the city or the employees, or even the council, with all that we have on our plate in September. So I'm adamantly opposed to waiting till September. I really want to see us take the initiative to find one day in the next month that we could, after, at least 2 weeks notice to the public about the appointment, that give them time to get their applications in. But in the last 2 weeks of July, I'm sure we could find a day in there that we could hear from appointees and get this process done, so that would give the city employees the whole entire month of August to train this person. So I really don't want to wait till September. I don't know how other council members feel, but that's just adding more weight, more burden when we don't have to.
The other consideration, as I said at the last meeting, was I would not support an expedited process if there was any candidate who would not be available because they had prearranged plans during that time. And I've been informed by one person who has told me they plan to apply and they are on vacation the last 2 weeks in July. So I don't think it's fair to our potential applicants to eliminate them from consideration because we want to rush this process.
What happens if we wait till September and somebody else has a conflict in September? Are we going to wait till October?
I think that's, well,
See, that's the
rather than
that's the
going,
challenge of doing
rather
it. You're
than
setting
going back,
precedent by
rather
doing
than
it.
going back and forth, you have said your opportunity. I've had mine. Does anyone else have comments? And then we'll take a vote on whether we want to expedite the process. Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. The rules are clear that it can't be posted until the appointment, the resignation becomes effective. I don't see the need to rush this, especially in the summer. Several of us have vacations coming up. I know I have 2 weeks in July. By law, we have 90 days after the resignation date to do this process. So I never heard of a training in August that the staff does for council. If that is some sort of new protocol that I'm unaware of, I'd like to be educated on that. But anyway, I don't see the need to rush this. I have every confidence that we'll have plenty of candidates and we'll be just fine waiting till the appropriate time. Thanks.
Any other comments on the process? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Cavallari that I feel like it looks better for us to wait, like, by the time Mark, Councilmember Bond steps down, and then it takes time, a few days to get the posting. Usually we leave it up for at least 3 to 4 weeks for applicants, and that would put us into August when the council is not in session typically. I just feel like having a longer process where we allow this time for all applications to come in and recognize that some people may be on vacation in the city, and some council members may be on vacation, just gives us a more equitable, more transparent process and gives us the opportunity where we are not saying to residents that if you have a vacation, you are not allowed to be on our council. And I think it's just a more equitable process. So I'm in favor of waiting to actually do the appointment at our first meeting in September.
Any other comments? Not hearing any. Is anyone inclined to expedite it, or are we okay with noticing, assuming that Councilmember Bond does not change his mind on June 29th, and the 29th is still the effective date, we could have staff be prepared to send out the solicitation on June 30th, collect applications safe for a month, the end of July, and then have the interviews and selection at the September 6th meeting.
I'd like to make a motion, Mayor.
Okay.
I want to take a vote
Okay,
because I do think I think there's a terrible misunderstanding here on a couple of issues. Councilmember Cavallari said he didn't know about
Well,
training in August, so.
let's make a
there was some-
motion and see if there's a second, and then
All right. I think it's critical that we move fast on this, not drag it out to
we need to
September.
make a motion and see if there's a
So I'm
second.
making a motion that the council move forward with an appointment either in the last 2 weeks of July or the first week of August, if need be, to get a candidate appointed to the seat in time to be prepared to take office, updated, trained, and ready to go for our first meeting in September.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions?
I abstain.
The motion fails 2-4 with Councilmember Bond abstaining. So with the failure of that motion, do we need to formalize a motion for a process or? Someone,
Mayor?
Councilmember Bond,
Thank you. So one of the reasons that I announced prior to the just coming in and saying it's been fun and I'm out was to provide anybody that might be interested some time to prepare their resumes, to perhaps consider vacation, childcare, whatever issues they might be juggling. This is a great opportunity, and we are filled with a city full of wonderful people that'll likely step up and express some interest. And just for the record, June 29 is it. I'm done. Even if my house deal falls through, if anything happens, I intend to, this chapter in my life is closing, and I'm going to be moving towards a new chapter. And I just don't want anybody out there thinking, well, I don't want to put the effort if he's going to change his mind. I appreciate the thoughts there, but I have no intention of changing. If you want this position, then please start preparing for it. It's a wonderful opportunity, and you won't be disappointed.
Well, I would prefer to
Hold
plan
on,
for your
Ken.
resignation rather than your departure. So I'm happy.
Councilmember Duque.
Since that motion failed, I would like us to consider then still moving forward with on June 30th, starting the promotion process, not waiting until posting until July 6th, as that's listed. I'd like us because then that fills what it seems like the 4 who voted, you wanted more time for people to be able to apply. So I want to make sure we're not there's an adjustment to the expedited schedule.
Councilmember Cavallari.
So just out of curiosity, what would that solve? What does that do? 4 or 5 days? I'm kind of lost here. I don't know what we're doing. This process has been, the resignations, the appointments has been played out for years and years, as long as we've been an incorporated city. Why is this case different? Why are we pushing an 18-year tenured council member while he's sitting here, which I find in poor taste, by the way? Why are we sitting here discussing how to pick through the bones when there is already a process in place? We already know what has to be done here. It's been done to death. Nothing new here. So why? Somebody please explain why.
I don't think that's what she was suggesting in the, when we put together this proposed schedule before we had the chance to confer with Grant. Might be looking at whatever goes out publicly at the first council meeting after the active. I think all Councilmember Duque is suggesting is, let's not wait to the 5th once the resignation is effective. Let's have staff be ready on the 30th, once the resignation is effective, to start the process. Okay. Councilmember Stick.
Just clarification for you, Councilmember Cavallari. It is not a typical process in an appointment to wait 2 months to make appointment to a vacated position. That is what's unusual. And that's why we're talking about this. And that's why we're talking about moving quickly rather than waiting 2 months. Waiting 2 months is not typical.
Okay,
And why
so-
would the legislature give us 90 days?
So the motion failed. Is there,
Do we actually need, do we actually usually do a motion for this?
no, we don't, but we've had some dispute as to how we should proceed. And so
Okay.
I wanted to make sure there was clarity on how we want to proceed. So we've voted down expedited process. So I was asking if we're good noticing on the 30th, collecting applications through July 30th, and then holding the interviews and having the selection on Tuesday, September 6th. Is my date correct? I believe that's the first Tuesday in September. Everyone okay with that? We could have a formal motion if you'd like.
Yes, I think just, yes, I'm okay with that. I'm assuming that Councilmember Bond will, I'm caught up in the legalities right now in my head, but I'm assuming that Councilmember Bond will resign then, because I feel like legally we can't be doing anything till then. So I hate to make a motion that we're going to do it at a specific actual date.
The motion could be caveated upon, conditioned upon the resignation becoming effective on June 29th. We would do the following.
Okay, I'll make a motion that contingent upon the resignation of Councilmember Bond, we will immediately go out to send out the notice for applicants with the plan on us making deliberations on Tuesday, September 6, 2022.
Just a clarification, interviews and deliberation.
Okay, yes, interviews and deliberation and selection.
With that caveat, I'll second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't see. Grant?
Question, just want to confirm that the contingent upon Councilmember Vaughn, in fact, resigning on the 30th of June, then you would be you'd be opening the application process, and then the closing date for applications would be Friday, the 29th still?
No, so I believe he said his resignation is effective the 29th on a Thursday. So we would post on Friday, assuming that happens, we'd post on Friday, June 30th. And the applications would be open through Friday's not a 30th.
29th is a
29th.
I feel like we could have them open into August if we're not.
That's fine with me. If you make that
So
motion.
what is that? I'm looking, sorry. The August, so open through, I'm amending my and I'm going the wrong way, which is not helpful. I think through Friday, August 19th would be, and that would give sufficient time for staff to get things ready for us.
Okay, so the motion as amended would be posting on June 30th, applications open through August 19th, and interviews, deliberations, and selection on Tuesday, September 6th.
With that amendment, I'll still second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
I didn't catch, was that 6-0, or was anyone vote no? Okay. With that, we are done with that topic, and we're going to talk about landscape maintenance. Mr. Combs.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As you all know, and for the audience at home, my name is Matthew Combs. I'm the Supervisor of Public Works here for the city of Mill Creek. And I've come before you today requesting authorization for the city manager to execute a contract for landscape services. The city began contracting several years ago in an effort to free up crew members so they could address other maintenance items and a growing list of repairs as the city evolved and ages. These services include our 11 city parks, our street medians on Village Green Drive, Seattle Hill Road, and SR 527, ditches like along 137, and our ponds like the one across from Freedom Field and the washed out pond behind QFC. Our current contract is set to expire on July 31st of this year. In accordance with our city procurement policy, section 5.2 and 8.1, we advertised twice in the Daily Herald, the Daily Journal of Commerce, and it was posted on the city website continuously throughout the proposal period. Excuse me. After more than 2 weeks, proposals were due on May 2nd. The following Monday on May 9th, the Public Works leadership team opened and reviewed the proposals. And we awarded or found Plantscapes to be the lowest responsible proposal. Plantscapes currently is our contractor for landscaping services. And for the last couple of years, prices have remained the same. This year has a 7% increase. The duration of this new contract will be for 1 year, and we will have 2 additional 1-year extensions at our discretion. Total contract price this year will be $148,993.96. That is the amount we are asking for the authorization for the city manager to execute the contract for. Does anybody have any questions?
I do, but I'll let others go first if they do. But here's my question. It's on the scope of section 2, tree shrubs, ground cover, beds, and medians. For the medians, we have the right-of-way medians weekly, the roadway medians every other week, and the 527 medians every other month.
Yes.
How did we arrive, especially at the 527 medians? I've been noticing the medians inside the Village Green Drive look great. Doing them every other month, I'm not sure that's frequent enough on 527. They do not look very good.
Fair enough. The reason that it's set for every other month is because of the significant risk that it takes to be out in the roadway like that. And the fact that we have to shut down an entire lane for that service every median along the road.
I'd look for us maybe with the next contract to look at ways to have that more frequent. That is a big, there's pretty significant medians up and down 527, and that's what people see driving through our community.
I appreciate the feedback.
The other is, and many of you have heard me say this before on the medians, the one that drives me, you know what, crazy is the median outside of the city on 164th coming down the hill, which is the first thing you see on the major entrance to the city, which has, as of an hour and a half ago, has grass that's 2 feet high. I don't know if we can do it through an amendment to this contract if we approve it, or if we can look for the future contract, but I for one, would encourage us to look into doing an interlocal with the county so that we can take control of maintaining that median, which is the first thing people see coming into our city. So that may not affect this contract, but I'd like to see us address that in the future.
That's great feedback. And actually, I appreciate that you pointed out that that is a county median, not a city median. So there could possibly be an ILA for that.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments from council? Councilmember Duque.
And it might be because I'm not familiar with looking at this type of information and I meant to reach out before the meeting, so apologies. But bike lanes throughout the city that have sidewalks or landscaping next to it. So what happens is I'm noticing that there's a lot of overgrowth that's hitting where the bike lanes would be throughout the city, thinking about Bethel Everett Highway. And I'm also thinking about 132nd, which I know, again, that's one of the tricky, I'm just curious, where does that fall in? Because I saw medians, but the clearing and the maintenance of that, because some areas are sidewalk and some are not. And maybe this is a discussion I should have had with you privately.
Yeah. Maybe not
Sorry.
privately, but it is a discussion because there's a lot that goes into that. There's certain areas that are not our, certain areas that are. So there's a lot mixed in there.
Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Combs.
Thank you. again.
Landscapes does a nice job.
They do.
Okay, that moves us to a first of two study sessions this evening. Item E, or proposed ordinance 2022-879, Planning Commission resolution regarding wetlands. I believe this is going to be a presentation tonight, and we'll have it on the agenda for two weeks from now for council consideration and action. But I'll turn over to Director Dodd.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. Thank you for letting us take some time tonight. It was originally written up and it's in your packet for action tonight, but we are stepping back in respect for the time that you guys have lots of things yet to do. And it will be a full presentation. Our wetland consultant would have come tonight and given a very full presentation, but instead we're going to have a kind of a high level flyover that Justin's going to run us through. It's kind of a first reading for this, give you an exposure to this. This is an important topic. We don't want to belittle it. It's also a heavy lift. And so this is a chance for you to kind of be exposed to it, think about some questions and come back in a couple of weeks after having had a chance to ask those questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Justin and lead us through it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mike. It's working? All right.
Yep.
All right. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, thank you for having me tonight. So I'll be discussing, as Mike said, a very high-level overview of the proposed ordinance 2022-879 concerning wetland regulations in the city. So first, a bit of context. The city is required by state law to base its critical areas regulations on the best available science provided by the Department of Ecology. Last year, staff reached out to the city's wetland consultant, ESA, it's ESA, it's Environmental Science Associates, there we go, to review the city's code and see if it is still in line with the best available science. ESA reviewed the code and found that there were several discrepancies with the Department of Ecology's guidance, and they proposed several amendments to the city code. Staff took these amendments to the Planning Commission in January for a study session to review the amendments. And then in May, the Planning Commission voted to recommend adoption of the ordinance to City Council. Next, I'm going to give an overview of current city code and the proposed amendments. First of all, here's a map of the wetland areas in Mill Creek. You can see that they're dispersed throughout the city, although for the purposes of these amendments, the most important wetlands are going to be in the southwest corner along Bethel Everett Highway, Mill Creek Boulevard, and 9th Avenue, because that's where the most development is likely to occur in the city, and there is significant wetlands in that area. So there's two ways in the code that we protect wetlands primarily. The first is by establishing wetland buffers, and the second is by avoiding impacts or mitigating impacts that cannot be avoided. So the first method is the wetland buffers. So the buffer is the area around the wetland that is prevented from having development inside, and it has primarily native vegetation. And so that buffer provides a protective area around the wetlands to help them fulfill their functions ecologically. And the width of the buffers is dependent on the category of the wetland and the intensity of the surrounding land use. The state developed a 4-category system for classifying wetlands, with the level 1 category being the most important, and the level 4 being the least important wetlands. So our current city code classifies wetland buffers by intensity of the surrounding land use and by the wetland category. In addition, developers can engage with a system called buffer averaging, where they can reduce the buffer in certain areas in exchange for increasing it in other areas. So they average out the buffer overall is the same area size-wise. And our current buffer widths are at the high end of the guidance provided by the Department of Ecology. Here's a table that shows our current buffer width table. Something to note, you can see that there's the categories and then there's the impact. And the low impact category is, we have it, but it's not applicable to most of the city. Pretty much any development or any land use in Mill Creek qualifies for high impact use. So that's the most important category for Mill Creek. The proposed amendments, there's 3 different aspects of them. The first is to change how we base the buffer width. And instead of doing the only classification and intensity, there would be classification, intensity, and habitat score. The amendments would also continue to allow buffer averaging, but would reduce the maximum average reduction from 50% to 25%. So instead of reducing the buffer width by 50% in one area and increasing it 50% in the other area, you can reduce it by only 25 and increase to 25. In addition, you can reduce, you'd be able to reduce the buffer widths in exchange for specific mitigation measures that would reduce impacts. So here is the proposed new table. As you can see, it's more complicated than the old one. It now includes the habitat score and the mitigation measures inside. And it's more complicated, but allows us to better rate the wetland systems and protect the wetlands because it better classifies them. And it's more flexible in some ways. The buffer widths are, in many cases, slightly smaller than the old table. But again, it's in line with what ecology has recommended based on their observations over the past decade. Here's a list of the mitigation measures that would be allowed to reduce the buffer widths. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but you're welcome to take a look in the packet over the next few weeks. The last amendment would increase the exemption for certain isolated wetlands. Currently, isolated wetlands that are less than 1,000 square feet are exempt from many of these rules. The new amendments would increase the exemption from 1,000 to 4,000 feet, but in exchange, in exchange for increasing the exemption, they would have to be mitigated. All impacts be mitigated. So any wetland that meets certain criteria, they're listed there, would be they'd be exempt from the buffer widths, and they could be filled, but they had to be mitigated by purchasing mitigation credits. I want to point out that we received 2 comments during the public comment phase for the Planning Commission. One was from Habitat Bank, and they were in favor of the amendments. The second was from the Tulalip tribes. The tribes were mostly in favor of the amendments, although they did not agree fully with the exemption for the small isolated wetlands. However, the Planning Commission decided to move forward with the amendments because they were based on the guidance from the Department of Ecology. So next steps, as you have a chance to look through the ordinance over the next couple of weeks, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I have my phone number up here, or you can send me an email. It's just my name, justin.horn@millcreekwa.gov. And then on June 28th, our wetland consultant, Margaret Clancy, will be coming. She was the one who developed the amendments. She'll be giving a more in-depth presentation about the background and all the effects that they would have on our critical areas. And then our staff recommendation is to adopt the ordinance on the 28th. Any questions?
Thank you, Justin. Any questions for this tonight? There'll be another opportunity in 2 weeks to, you have 2 weeks to dive into this more fully. And Councilmember Stickler.
I just have one question. So this is really interesting. This slide before this, where you talked about the 1,000 to 4,000 square feet. So what you're saying is these can be filled in and developed, but then that will cost you. You have some, mitigation credits that now have to be applied. But those can be held for a future project or a future endeavor or future utilization. Is that true?
Yeah, so you would purchase the mitigation credit, and I believe in some, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe what happens is you purchase a credit and somewhere else they preserve a different wetland that's not clearly protected, and they'll but I don't know all the specific details. I'll have to ask Margaret on that one.
So that would be interesting to us because we have a series of wetlands on approved plans we have. If we could move those credits over to one piece, then that could make much more of it adaptable.
Yeah, that's definitely the intention there. And of course, they also have to meet all the requirements. They're usually ones that qualify have pretty low habitat scores. So it's not going to be degrading any quality wetlands. It's only the ones that are already really degraded and standing in the way of development. So you can purchase credits and apply them to a better wetland somewhere else, essentially.
A deeper wetland, a wetland that has more chance to provide more of the habitat for the life, the aquatic life.
Exactly.
Thank you.
In wetland parlance, it'd be higher function and values.
Yes.
Any other questions tonight? Okay, thank you, Justin. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, now to item F, the American Rescue Plan Act. Are we jumping right in with Laurel? All in.
All right. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, so I met with everyone. I believe we had one council member have Martin contact because I was out on vacation. So we put this together, and initially we were going to have a much larger discussion, but because you have such a long meeting tonight, I'm going to have you guys summarize your top 3 priorities once we start working through this. And if you could just send those to me by Monday, we'll gather that information and move forward. So as we go into this, we really wanted to focus on our guiding principles, our mission, our values, and then we're going to go and we're going to look at where our funding areas were back in 2021. We're going to look at phase 1, where we're at, where we're wanting to go, how we start moving into phase 2. We still are, we have a lot of work to do in phase 1 at this point in time. We're going to go over the common priorities that everyone has mentioned, and then we're going to discuss the theme idea that emerged as we had the numerous conversations with council. And then we're just going to hit phase 2 real quick, and I'll let you guys go. So really, we just wanted to show everyone, just so we all are on the same page. We're going to look at the vision and mission, our goals, public safety, economic prosperity, fiscal responsibility. I just wanted to throw these up here so we knew what our main direction was. So we want to make sure that our community is safe, we're preserving the natural beauty, we want great neighborhoods, and we want our businesses to thrive. And then we also want to be setting the standard of excellence for our different local governments. So back in 2021, everyone had their ideas sent in, and this is where we were at. So I would approach this as a funding area or a bucket is what we've been calling them. And it is a smaller scope in these buckets versus this theme idea that we'll look at here shortly. Overall, I would say the funding areas are pretty much the same. We've just tweaked them slightly to include some of these are gathered together. Okay, so we're going to have 4 different phases. So this is going to be consistent with where we started. We have slightly changed. So at this point in time, we really just need to identify, do we want this bucket approach or do we want a more broad theme for some kind of project? Because it is a lot easier to sell to the community. You get a lot more buy-in if you have some kind of theme, some project that you can get excitement in the community going. So from there, once we decide, we're going to have 1 or 2 themes and then maybe a bucket or 2, or no, we want one specific theme. That's what we're going to stick with. So once we have this format, then you're going to have all of our staff is going to go and we're going to look at the different projects that fit into each of these categories. We're going to do the research. We're going to come to you. We're going to review it. We're going to change anything that we need to change. And then in phase 4, we're just going to do a final review and then we'll send funding out. Okay, so first we have to develop buckets if we want this bucket approach. So the buckets are really what we discussed in all of our interviews with each of you. The themes were, they just kind of evolved. So I would say your buckets are going to be a mutually exclusive funding area and it's a more specific scope. So it's not as broad. With your themes, you're going to have, it's going to be like a program or a plan with multiple funding areas. So I would say a good example is for your buckets, you have for community enhancing capital improvement, you would have some kind of a sidewalk program, your crosswalks, park upgrades, all of those would fall into that bucket. But then, your passport expansion isn't going to fit in there. Like it just doesn't fit that scope. So if you move into a theme, you can say, we want to do, the community revitalization, beautification, and preservation. We want this theme, this overarching umbrella. And then from there, we're going to put city operations, the different equipment, community enhancing capital improvement projects. We're going to have different internal capital improvement. All of these things can fall under this umbrella instead of us saying, hey, we need to stay in this specific bucket. So it's basically, it's a wider scope, and do we have some kind of a vision of some kind of project that we really want to accomplish? Okay, and so we just kind of jotted down, we went through these different items because we had talked about the buckets because that's where we had originally been heading. So these are the different buckets we discussed. So as we get to the end of this presentation, if you have other funding areas, if you want buckets or if you want themes, that is something that we can add. So these are newer. So for the themes, I was trying to go really, really broad. So these are just examples. If you guys have specific items, as you're thinking over the weekend and the rest of the week, I've got this program that I think would be great. Just email it and we'll get all of them put together. And then at our next meeting, we can really dig into that. So these are just some options. So for example, for community safety, we could throw the crosswalks in, maybe water fountains that are more resistant to vandalism, a camera system for your parks, that kind of thing. or for your economic prosperity. You could do a business improvement program. We could do a town center enhancement. You know, it's really anything you can come up with. And then the others I had just thrown out here in case anyone was interested. So as far as the common themes that everyone was on board for, we really had a lot of support for city operations, equipment, and infrastructure as far as maintenance and services for things like our sidewalks, keeping our streets clean. We also had a lot of community enhancement capital project support. So, you know, our parks, do we want pickle courts? If we want pickleball courts, where do we want them? Are like, which parks do we want to look at? Do we need some additional crosswalks? Where are sidewalks missing? We think, you know, could really help the city. And then we have community programs. I think unanimously everyone was in support of the daycare program, so the preschool program, the after-school care, and then really vamping up the recreation services. And then unanimously, it was also employer retention bonuses. So with that, I figured if anyone has any questions, we can hit that. And then just if you could send me your top 3 themes, or if you want to do buckets where you want themes and buckets, if you could just send, I would say 3 is probably going to be best. By Monday, we'll put that together, and then in our next meeting, we'll start digging into the weeds a bit more. Does anyone have any questions on buckets and themes and anything else? Or even priorities? Okay.
No questions? Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And that hasn't stopped you from asking questions before?
That was a good move, Laura. Good move.
Thank you for the presentation, Laura. That was a much shorter discussion than I was anticipating tonight. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda this evening. Item G, approval of checks number 64783 through 64829 and ACH wire transfers in the amount of $164,117.40. The audit committee was the Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Duque. Any exceptions?
No exceptions.
Good pull.
It sounds like, yeah, we need to pull items G and H off the consent agenda this week. Okay, Martin? I don't think Councilmember Duque was able to review them. So it's okay. So that makes our consent agenda item I, City Council meeting minutes of June 7th, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve item I on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve item I on the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda is approved. Okay, our reports. A little bad news and a lot of good news. The bad news is due to schedule conflicts, we have to schedule or cancel this month's city chat. The good news is there's a lot going on. Tomorrow, Scott Harder has asked me to film a video for the city out at Amazon Go. We have lots of new businesses opening up. I will have been asked to do a grand opening ribbon cutting on Thursday afternoon, first at Rustic Cork out in the farm, and then followed by a grand opening at Zeke's. And then 2 that I'm not able to attend, that the Mayor Pro Tem will be doing is Lilac and Lemon, a clothing store on the 18th, and Diva Forever Lashes on June 26th. So we have, that's with the other ribbon cuttings, I think that's 7 new businesses in the last 3 months. Good to see. So that's what I had tonight. Mayor Pro Tem, any reports?
Report, Mayor.
Councilmember Bond, your next to last opportunity for a report.
Boy, I got lots to say. Not really, but we had a gentleman's share in the beginning. And what I want to just say, it would be a horrible precedent by this council to undermine staff and to override their decision. And I would not ever be in favor of that. The gentleman indicated that there was other examples that throughout the city of different fences, but he didn't indicate when they were developed and under what code they were authorized under. So there's bits and pieces of relevant information that sadly we lack without having staff briefing us. What he did bring to us is the fact that he has what he believes to be a reasonable use of his property, and it's not consistent with our current code. So what I would recommend we consider that staff provide their assessment of this and why they feel the project doesn't meet the code. And then we can decide if that code is still applicable or if a code change is in order. That sounds to me to be the proper way to go about addressing the concerns that were shared by the gentleman. And hats off to staff for the good job. He was frustrated with being told no, but he never indicated anybody was anything but professional, and appreciate it. And good job, Justin.
Well said.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any objection to what Councilmember Bond has suggested? Okay, Martin,
Got it. Understood.
okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Steckler, report tonight.
No report.
Councilmember Cavallari,
No report, Mayor.
Councilmember Allison,
No report.
Councilmember Duque,
No report.
acting city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick report. The council chamber retrofit was originally planned for the third week of this month. It's been moved to August 8th through the 20th. So we're not in session. That's all I have. Thank you.
Chief,
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. I was asked to give a report on hiring update for the police department. I'm actually very excited to present to the council tonight because we have 3 conditional offers that have been signed by candidates, 2 laterals, 1 entry level. So that's a very good sign that things are starting to pick up. We have a possibility of another letter of intent from a 3rd lateral candidate. So we're very happy with this. Backgrounds are still taking some time to get through. So the consultant has really helped us out with scheduling these things. And so his addition to the staff has really helped us tremendously, just the organizational side of it without having any other duties to take care of has really helped us. So we're very excited. We are going to be having we've actually gone through the entire list we had originally 12 applicants for entry level. We've gone through that entire list. So we'll be having another entry level test next month to establish a new list. So with our current 8 vacancies, and we're going to try and make sure that we're hiring up to that level as soon as possible. And then looking forward to having an existing list in place. So as people retire, we have that attrition come in that we can backfill those spots as quickly as possible. As far as the police support services position, we still have 1 vacancy there. We are looking at developing a test for that. There isn't really a testing center that provides testing for police records. So we're trying to develop a test with that by looking at what other jurisdictions are doing, other municipalities, and learning from them and moving forward with that testing process. So support services manager Heath and I will be looking at that process along with our new human resource manager, Ms. Mills. So hopefully that will happen in the next month. That is it for the police department. Questions?
great update. Good to hear.
Good job, Chief.
Good news. Anything else from staff?
Nothing else, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Brings us to audience communication. One last opportunity before we move on to executive session. Barb, Ms. Heidel, start with you and then I'll move online.
Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place Southeast Mill Creek. Thank you, Mayor. First off, I was really hoping there would be an update tonight on the search for city manager. I do understand that there's going to be executive session, but it doesn't say what it's about. So I really had hoped we'd see something happening because we didn't have a report last week. Second off, I want to say that I'm sorry to see Mark go. I'd love to see his smiling face and his support for seniors. And you've been a really nice person to get to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Anyone online like to address the council? Okay, going once, twice, 3 times. Okay. With that, we will adjourn shortly pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection G for an executive session to evaluate the qualifications of an applicant for public employment. We anticipate that action may be taken when we're done. I think we may need up to 2 hours, but I don't want to lock us in that room for up to 2 hours if we use less than 2 hours. So I would propose when we start that we do half-hour increments and extend as necessary. In the meantime, can we go ahead now and why don't we extend the regular meeting till, why don't we just do 10 o'clock? I don't expect us to go that long, but that would avoid us having to come out and extend the regular meeting.
Mayor, I would make that motion to move the meeting until 10 o'clock.
It's a motion to extend the regular meeting till 10 o'clock.
Correct.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And then finally, before we go in, would it be appropriate for Linnell to give a summary so when we come out of executive session, everyone understands what the process is? Could we, Linnell, are you prepared to kind of give us a summary of where we're at and what we're going to be doing when we come out?
Yes, so about a week ago, we submitted the candidate reports, which included all of the accumulation of our background checks to the council members. They've had the last week to review all of the qualifications individually for the council members. So now we'll be going into executive session where we can discuss the qualifications of the candidates. And then at the end of that discussion, we will come back out into open session and the council members one at a time will have an opportunity to indicate which of the semifinalists they want to interview. The council members can pick as many as they'd like. And just for the public's information, we submitted information on 9 candidates. 1 has withdrawn. So we have 8 possibilities. And we will not be releasing names tonight because our recruiting brochure stated that we will not release names without permission. So tonight will be when we come back into open session and to do the vote. It'll be by number, but then once the finalists are suggested in a day or 2, once we get permission from the candidates, we will release their names. So did I miss anything?
I think you covered it. Does anyone have any questions before we start? Okay. So with that, it is roughly 7 o'clock. So we will be in executive session until 7:30 unless we extend otherwise. So we will be adjourning to executive session for 30 minutes.
Council is extending executive session until 8 PM. Council is extending executive session until 8:30.
So are you going on vacation?
Going out of town. Yeah, I'm going back to see my family.
Oh, where's that?
My family, it's true, brother. So I'm the one that. So, yeah, I'm going back. And I'm going with one sister to Boston to see the three Broadway shows. And then she goes home. My other sister
Naomi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, it's 8:28. We've concluded our executive session. And we are going to take a 5-minute recess to use the bathrooms before we go back into, start things back up. So
Okay, very good.
we'll get going. How about 8:35, 6 minutes?
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Bart. You just hung out here with Grant for an hour and a half?
I'm over 60. Too late. My battery went dead. Does it feel weird after what, 18 years? How long have you been a councilman?
So I did the finish row,
18 years. Yeah. That's a long time. So much in your life has changed so much in 18 years. Your life has been through. Did you leg by then? What happened afterwards? Not your leg. So you're already going through that. Man. Oh, that's right. It's about 100. That probably got in for leg, yeah. I remember that house because you were down the street from a friend of Christopher's. So I remember your cop car was up front. Matthew's Spa. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Right down the street from you. Yep, they love living by you. We love living by a cop who leaves his car up front. Does great things for the neighborhood. Crime goes. Incredible. Oh my God. Some knucklehead. Incredible. Was he just an idiot? I mean, was he stoned? Was he out of his? Wow.
So, and that's what I was. So, yeah, it just it's so.
Okay, who's- Someone have
Does somebody have their sound on? You have to mute all your devices and the Zoom also has to be muted.
Can you guys check to make sure you're on mute?
I am,
And
not me. I'm
That's
innocent.
better. Thank you.
something improved.
Oh, friend of mine once told me.
I'm only waiting until 8:35 because we said we'd be in recess for 2 more minutes. So
he lost his wife. It's the hardest thing to do is to run that next chapter in his life. He's Barbara anymore. He says, God, I move on. It's a lot of change. And that's the reason why I like about the next chapter.
But I had,
I had moved on to retirement. When consulting, not having to be a corporate guy anymore. Three-piece suits and the big staff and the secretary and all that. It was hard to me. But I'm done. Now I'm loving it. So long. Yeah. But you were ready. Yeah, you were ready. Yeah, you were ready for a different career. You're ready for a new chapter. You needed to do it. Yeah. Yeah. Learned all this stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
okay, are we ready? Naomi, you ready to get going?
We are.
Okay, let's come back into order. So here we've finished our executive session to discuss the qualifications of the candidates. Here's what our suggested process is again. That we would go down the dais. I'd start with the Mayor Pro Tem and then go down in order, and I'll go last. And we would just identify, again, by numbers, not name, who each of us would like to bring back. This is not a vote. So if a candidate got 4 votes, that does not mean they are a finalist. The intent here is to see where people are at. Is there majority support to bring back all 8? Is there majority support to bring back 2? And so once we see where that straw poll is at, we can then open the floor for motions to nominate by number the candidate or candidates to be brought back for interviews in a couple weeks. Questions, comments? Clear? Okay, so again, those are the numbers. So we will start with the, well, let's just go down the, make it simpler rather than go down the dais. Let's just go in the order of that they're listed on there. So Councilmember Allison, who would you bring back for interviews?
I would bring back candidate number 5, candidate number 7, candidate number 8, candidate number 10, and candidate number 11.
Councilmember Bond,
Candidate 8, candidate 10, candidate 11.
Councilmember Cavallari,
Thank you, Mayor. I would bring back candidate 5, candidate 8, and candidate 11.
Councilmember Duque,
Candidate number 7, number 8, and number 11.
yes, that's me. I would bring back candidate number 5, 7, number 8, 10, and 11. Councilmember Steckler.
Your number 10 didn't get selected.
Oh, did you get my? There we go. Thank you. Councilmember Steckler.
Candidate number 5, candidate number 7, candidate number 8, candidate number 10.
And Mayor Pro Tem.
Number 5, candidate number 7, candidate number 8, and candidate number 11. That's it. Thank you.
So I can't see the, how do I get the screen minimized? So I can, there we go. Okay. So now everyone sees where people's heads are at and who they'd want to bring back. We can, from here, entertain motions individually for a candidate. If someone wanted to make a motion for a group.
So how do we want that? Is that me? How do we want that to work, Mayor? Do you want, I mean, since we've already given the list, do you want us to go and give detail on the candidates we want to bring back?
I don't think so, because we need to keep it confidential. We're just keeping it by numbers, so I don't think we can discuss that yet.
Okay.
So again, the intent here is to see, it looks like there's 5 that have at least 4 votes. The question is, do we want to bring all 5 back or not?
We generally recommend that you select 5 to interview. Sometimes candidates withdraw or they find another job. So we feel like 5 is a good number, but it really is up to you and what you want.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'd like to make a motion to bring back the top 5 the top 5 who received votes, to bring those in for interview,
Let's
please.
just do it by number. So the
I-
motion would be to bring back candidates 5, 7, 8, 10, and 11.
No, 10 only got, one
Got
minute,
4.
1, 2, 3,
I would
4.
second that motion
Oh,
if it
mhm.
were candidate number 5, candidate
all in
number
5.
7, candidate number 8, and candidate number 11.
Yeah, they are all in there. Sure. Then there's 5. Yeah, I miscounted.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If we bring candidate 10 in, that's 5.
Well, we don't have to do this as a group. You can do it by individual, if it makes it easier, by individual candidate, and we can knock them off that way. Otherwise, we might have a motion for a slate and then discuss amendments. Was open.
Mayor, I like the motion to bring back the top 5 candidates. Is that still open?
Yeah.
What did you formally put that motion on the? table?
Yeah, so I'd like to
Okay,
make a
so
motion.
is that a second of the motion?
I'll second that motion, the top 5 candidates.
So just to be clear, the top 5 there's only 5 that got votes, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So
Yes.
Candidates 5, 7, 8, 10, and 11.
10 and 11.
Any discussion? You good with your light off? Did you
Oh,
have a
yeah,
comment?
sorry, I don't
That's
need-
fine, I turned it off.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of bringing back the motion to bring in for interviews candidates 5, 7, 8, 10, and 11, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. So some housekeeping measures. I assume Linnell from here will work expeditiously to contact the candidates to let them know that they're finalists and get authorization to publicize the names, and then we can get information out about the finalists. Correct?
Yes, I will start communicating this evening. I know they're waiting anxiously.
Okay.
So both for those that were selected and those that were not.
Okay, and Councilman Cavalier?
Thank you, Mayor. And if I could just ask of Lynette to get each council member, or if we can do this by consensus, have all of us receive a binder with the updated 5 candidates. So it's easily to read.
I circulated late last week the set of questions that we used for the panel interviews. So the questions that I circulated were originally used 2 searches ago. And then with our last search, we brought up the same list of questions and then made a couple of tweaks to them. So I would suggest if each of you, if anyone has individual recommendation for changes, additions, or modifications, email them to me, not copying the other council members. And I'll see whether or not, based on what I receive, if anything, whether we may need to have a short special meeting next week to finalize the questions, because we don't have another meeting between now and when we do the interviews on the 25th. But hopefully that will be unnecessary. If not, if there's only a few suggestions, we may be able to tackle it in 10 minutes at the beginning of Saturday, the interviews.
Mayor?
Yep.
I don't know, but I think Linnell sent us two sets of
It's a
questions.
different set of questions. That was a set of interview questions that was tailored towards the individual interviews. We each meet one-on-one. The set I sent around is, remember when we did the panel interviews, we had an agreed set of 20 questions that when we interviewed the candidates collectively, that we asked questions from. So we were choosing from the same set of questions when we interviewed them as a group publicly.
Okay.
Naomi sent those around on Friday afternoon. It's the same set we've used the last two interviews, last two searches.
And are we interviewing, I'm so sorry to say this, but are we interviewing the candidates collectively? I know our
Yes, so,
individuals. times, I don't know.
here's what will happen on, the candidates will be brought in, and on Friday afternoon, they're going to be doing, or Friday, they're doing a tour of the city with staff. The end of the afternoon, there's going to be a open house of sorts, or opportunity for the staff to meet and interact with the candidates. That'll be prior to the open house that evening for the public. On Saturday, we will do the panel interviews in the morning.
Aren't those individual?
No, so we as a group will have the candidate sitting there, and the 7 of us will interview the candidate from a set of questions. While we're interviewing one candidate, the directors are going to be conducting their own interview with the candidate in a different location, probably in the City Hall North. And then after lunch, we will do the individual interviews. It's the same way, this is the same way we did it last time.
So I got a list of individual times in the morning for Saturday.
Well, we hadn't settled on, the schedule was blank. It just said AM, and we've decided to do the panel interviews first, so that our thinking was, that's the way we did it last time. So if something comes up during the group interview that you want to follow up with the candidate about in your individual interview, you'll be able to do that by doing the panel interviews first.
I've not received that updated schedule. All I have is the individual times in the morning.
We don't have the updated schedule.
It's because we didn't know if there's no official schedule yet, because we didn't know if we were going to be voting to bring back 1, 2, 5, or 9 candidates. So we didn't have a schedule to put together until we made the decisions we did tonight to bring back 5 people.
So now that we know the number, I will put that schedule together.
Yeah, I'm sorry. All I had was the individual schedule for Saturday or Friday morning.
For Saturday morning.
Saturday morning. That's
Yeah.
all I had.
No, so nothing, you still need to be here, I think, 8 o'clock on Saturday. We just, unless there's strong objections, our thought was, we did the panel interviews first last time, and our thinking was, again, if you wanted to follow up with the candidate individually on something they said to the group, you'd have that opportunity to do that. You wouldn't have that if you met with them individually. And then we did the panels, because we've agreed the past 2 searches to do the panel interviews from a set list of questions.
And I thought the same thing as Councilmember Steckler, but I just figured that you just decided to switch it, which is fine by me. It doesn't make a difference. But I would just reiterate that that we have a binder with the questions, with the candidates, and with the format, all one nice, neat and tidy binder.
Yep. Other questions?
And this is for Saturday, the 25th.
Correct. And we will have breakfast, lunch, and dinner for everyone, because it will be a long day.
Do we need to discuss the meet and greet for everybody the night before?
We don't need to unless someone wants to.
We're not meeting again until the meet and greet, right?
Until the open, yes, that's correct.
So,
Unless,
Where do you want us?
no, we don't.
No, we don't.
That's why I said if there are changes to the questions, or if there's something we need to consider, send them to me, and I'll figure out whether or not there's enough changes that warrant a discussion to have a short special meeting for a half an hour or 45 minutes Tuesday night. Or if it's 1 or 2 tweaks that we could knock off in 5 or 10 minutes before we start the interviews on Saturday morning.
Okay, so we'll get an updated schedule, an updated list of questions. All
Yes.
this will be coming.
Now that we know how many candidates we're bringing back, Linnell will put together the more specific schedule, both for the panel, because we didn't know how long our panel interviews would be, not knowing how many people we're going to bring back.
Okay.
All good? Okay, I think that is all we had for this evening. So hopefully we won't need to see everyone next Tuesday night. And if not, and Naomi, you'll take care of the notice for the both special meetings, the notice of potential quorum for the 24th and the special meeting on the 25th.
I will.
Okay. With that, I think we've done our business for the evening and we'll be adjourned at 8:49. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.